Good afternoon, everybody. We've got ourselves a little bit of Seahawks-related breaking news once again. It wasn't that long ago that we were congregating on this channel to discuss the official departure of a defensive lineman, and now here we are doing it again. This time it is Al Woods. Al Woods is off the market. He is signing with the New York Jets. So if we were keeping Al Woods on speed dial going into this season and we were planning on bringing him back, well, that plan has now been thrown out the window. We need a new plan if that was the plan. Al Woods will be a member of the New York Jets going forward. And I don't think there's any real possibility of him being a preseason training camp cut. I think that he's at least a good enough player to earn a 53-man spot on a average NFL team. So Al Woods will be elsewhere this year. He was fun to have around. Liked having him these last couple years. He was a valued part of this defense, but at the end of the day, age was starting to become a factor, and he wasn't, I mean, last year in particular, I certainly wouldn't have called him great, but this does leave us in a little bit of an interesting position, and I think that a lot of Seahawks fans are now wondering where do we go from here on the defensive line, specifically the interior, because there is a notable lack of bulk in the middle. So let's briefly talk about that, because the Al Woods thing just kind of is what it is. He wasn't on the team before. He's not on the team now. I think some people maybe were expecting it, but now they won't. That's about the only thing that's changed. So I've been thinking about this a little bit lately, because you guys know that I like to look at league-wide trends and then lean into them. I try to look at what is working and what is not working for other teams and learn from whatever those teams are doing or, in some cases, not doing. And Al Woods, I mean, again, good player. Valuable piece on your defensive line. Valuable against the run. Nice player. Fun player to have around for sure. But in a general sense, if you're talking about Al Woods, what is he? He's a big, wide-bodied nose tackle, zero tech, one tech type who helps take up space in the middle of the defense against the run. And that is something that this defense is currently kind of lacking right now. It was supposed to be Bryan Mone, but Mone's hurt, and I'm not expecting him to be back for week one. In fact, I'm not expecting him to be back anytime this year. The fact that I haven't heard a peep about Bryan Mone this offseason really tells me that it's not looking too good. Like, I feel like if his recovery was going well and he was expected to be back this season, we'd be hearing a little more about it. So no news is bad news. And with Mone out, you've got two rookies as your presumptive nose tackles right now. You've got Cameron Young, who is a fifth-round rookie and also a little bit undersized, 304 pounds or so. And then you've got Robert Cooper, who played at Florida State at like 335 pounds. He's a big guy, maybe even like 340. But he was a UDFA. So those are your nose tackles right now. That's your big, bulky girth that you've got in the middle. But I want to take a look at something here real quick, because I think a lot of people are starting to go into panic mode about nose tackle. And don't get me wrong, it's not good. But I want to look at a couple of teams from last year. I want to take a look at the two teams that had the best run defenses in the league by far. There are two teams in the NFL last year that were elite against the run. They both allowed an average of 3.4 yards a carry, which was much better than anybody else in the NFL. I think third place was like 3.9 or 4 yards a carry. First, it's the San Francisco 49ers. They allowed the second fewest rushing yards in the league last year, I think. Let's take a look at their defensive line here. I pulled up their roster from last year. This is every defensive lineman they had on the team last year. Listed from Turi up here, Kamoko Turi, all the way down to Kevin Givens. If you take a look at these guys, you might notice something. There's one guy on this list who is over 305 pounds. And it's Javon Kinlaw, who played less than 10 snaps a game on average. He played like 160 snaps the whole season. The only other guy they have over 300 is Akeem Spence, who is 303, so, you're splitting hairs there. Everybody else, sub 300. Every other player that played on the defensive line for the San Francisco 49ers last year was sub 300. They gave a tiny bit of action to Akeem Spence, a little bit of action to Javon Kinlaw. Everybody else, sub 300 pounds. Oh, excuse me, Hassan Ridgeway, also 305 pounds. But this team had no problem stopping the run. 3.4 yards a carry. Best or second best run defense in all of football in 2022. So some people are going to say, "Oh, well, that's a 4-3 defense. That's not what the Seahawks are doing. They're trying to move to this 3-4. Niners run a 4-3. It's different." You're right. But then I look at the Tennessee Titans, who were the other team that allowed 3.4 yards a carry on the ground last year. This is every defensive lineman they have, starting up here at DeMarcus Walker, going all the way down to Naquan Jones. They've got a couple of guys who are over 300, but they include guys like Jaden Peavy, who played in one game, and Jeffrey Simmons, who is not a run stuffer, we know that, and then Naquan Jones, who played less than 10 snaps a game. The one guy that they had listed as nose tackle, who actually played a significant chunk of the season, was T.I.R. Tart, who's listed at 304, so barely over 300 pounds. Barely over 300 pounds. And he was their starting nose tackle, with Naquan Jones basically his backup for the season. And yeah, you're not seeing a whole lot of size up here either. Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons is above 300, but we all know that Jeffrey Simmons is not some space-eating, big, girthy guy in the middle there. He's a penetrator. He's somebody who gives you 7 to 8 sacks a season. He played 15 games last year and I think had 7.5 sacks or something like that. So this team, elite against the run, like significantly better than every team in the league outside of the Niners, that runs a 3-4, by the way. That's the thing I want to emphasize here. They run a 3-4. Look at the guys they're getting it done with. They got one big fat nose tackle in there, and he was a guy who played less than 10 snaps a game, in Naquan. Their starting nose tackle was barely over 300 pounds. And then everybody else, except for Jeffrey Simmons, who is, again, barely over 300 pounds, was sub 300 pounds, or basically didn't play. Jaden Peavy played in one game. Like, that doesn't even really count. Who cares? So, what I'm trying to say is that you don't necessarily have to have the big trash can full of dirt in the middle. Some teams do it, and some teams do it very well. But it seems to me that in the modern NFL, teams are really starting to move away from the idea of getting these big, fat guys who can't move in the middle to plug the run. Seems to me that these teams are starting to think about, let's get slimmer guys, better athletes, guys who can move a little bit better, guys with a little more quickness, that do sacrifice a little bit in terms of strength and ability to hold their ground in the middle. But sometimes, not even that. Sometimes they overcome it because they're talented, they're good. They find ways to overcome something like a size and weight deficiency to still be stout against the run. But these were by far the two best run defenses in the league last year, in the Niners and the Titans. And I'm not seeing that big trash can full of dirt in the middle who just takes up a ton of space. So maybe this is what is driving the Seahawks' somewhat strange decision-making at nose tackle, where they had the opportunity to get better, or at least not get worse at the position, and basically passed it up at every opportunity. The only thing they've done this whole offseason to get better at nose tackle, really, is drafting Cameron Young. And that's an undersized guy. That is. I mean, he's like probably about the same weight as T.I.R. Tart. But maybe this explains why we're doing it. Alright, so that's my best guess at things right now, and that's why I say I think it's a bad idea to panic about anything right now. Like, there is definitely reason to be a little bit concerned about how weak we are at nose tackle. Like, it is a position on the football field, and I do believe it is possible we were hoping to bring back either Al Woods or Poona Ford to be that, and now we can't. Like, that's certainly on the table. But if you look at things a little bit unconventionally, you figure out, how did these other teams excel against the run? Like, what made the Niners so good against the run? Was it the fact that they had Hassan Ridgeway, T.Y. McGill, Javon Kinlaw, and Kevin Givens at defensive tackle? No, not really. Are any of those guys great players? Are any of those guys big presences on that defensive line? No. The guys on that defensive front who are high profile are guys like Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Fred Warner, and to a certain extent you could say like Dre Greenlaw. So they find other ways to get it done on the run D without having those big space eaters in the middle. And the Titans, what made them so great against the run? I mean, Jeffrey Simmons, great player. Okay, that's one of their guys who was playing as a defensive end more than anything in a 4-3. I'm sure he moved back and forth, but you were also getting some quality reps out of guys like, excuse me, Denico Autry, a little bit out of DeMarcus Walker, and generally speaking, it just seems like they found ways to do it without having that dominant presence, right? That big fat guy in the middle. So, as for where this leaves the Seahawks now, I will say that there is a little bit of potential urgency around trying to bring back Shelby Harris if you're trying to get something in the way of positive depth on this defensive line. Like, it doesn't have to be a big fat guy, it doesn't have to be a big run stuffer, but if you want it to be somebody so that you take a little bit of the stress off of guys like Mike Morris and Miles Adams to play well for us, you might want to bring in Shelby Harris sooner rather than later, because clearly we are seeing that teams are getting a little bit they're more into bringing in guys like the Poona Fords and the Al Woodses now that we're past the draft and compensatory picks no longer apply to anything. So Shelby Harris may be getting picked up soon too, so it behooves us to clear some cap space, or plan to clear some cap space, to bring him back if that's the plan. And that's the guy I really wanted back anyway. Like, Al Woods was good last year, but he's slipping. Poona Ford was not good last year. Shelby Harris is the guy who was actually good last year. He would be the guy who I would actually be, I would feel some sense of loss if we weren't able to bring back. All right, Al Woods goes to the Jets. Let me know what you guys think. See you guys later. Go Hawks.